What's up? Good to talk to you. This video is dedicated to talking entirely about what it's like being a 24-year-old in the city of Denver who works in vocational ministry as a creative. And I work at a church called Restoration, RST. And I also work for a young professionals organization called The Brook, where we bring young professionals together and help them investigate how to have a great life, great relationships, as well as know God. And I get to operate in creative roles within both of those organizations, as well as help oversee the 6 p.m. service at Restoration, which is a lot of fun. And this is a little bit unscripted, not gonna lie, but I just wanted to come on here and talk and share a little bit about, hey, maybe you're that young individual that is about to graduate college, or you're a young professional who has been passionate about wanting to work in vocational ministry, and just share a little bit about the truth behind what I've loved and enjoyed about my experience, but also share a little bit about what's been difficult within it. And one thing that I will say, I am so blessed to be in an opportunity where I get to leverage my skills and the things that I feel that God has given me, which are genuine blessings, and having those be able to be leveraged to progress His mission forward in different capacities. So within the context of The Brook, I help oversee all marketing, event promotion, help oversee all our creative vision, and helping produce the content that progresses our vision and mission forward, which is a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I get to capture stories of really incredible people every single week and leverage those stories to help other young professionals across the city and across the nation, truthfully, as I've got friends who have actually moved from out of state because they heard and found out about The Brook. Am I too dark? Maybe that's better. I might be blown out. We'll find out. But those are things that I do that are really exciting. And then for Restoration, I oversee a lot of our marketing, where I'm creating photos and videos. I kind of oversee all of the online platforms and the production of content that goes onto those online platforms. So social media like YouTube, as well as a bunch of other platforms. And yeah, that's kind of what I do at Restoration. I also help oversee our 6 p.m. service with my good buddy Trevor, who you might see on here, and you'll see me on his podcast, which is going to be fun. But it's been a great experience growing in those capacities. And I am the type of person who's been behind the lens a lot, but am in a position where I actually really enjoy speaking and communicating. And so I just want to share a little bit about my experience on this YouTube channel, and hopefully help other people out there who might be in a similar position relate or understand what it's like being so young and in a growing church, growing community, thriving community, and also understanding what it's like being in vocational ministry, because it can be great, but it can also be tough. So let's just share a little bit about some of the great things about being in vocational ministry, at least specifically within my specific context. One thing that's awesome is there's so much emphasis on people. If you're the type of person who really enjoys people, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, there's so much to be gained in regards to relationships when it comes to working in vocational ministries. I've gotten so much, and I cannot stress and communicate to what degree, joy and fulfillment from being able to leverage relationships that I have to help other people, whether that's being able to speak into the lives of people who are struggling, or connecting people with other individuals who are in need of whatever someone else can provide, and not seeing it as a using one another opportunity, but seeing it as a service opportunity, which is just one of the best things. There's a verse in Philippians that says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others as more significant than yourselves." And I just think that's such a true and incredible opportunity when you do work in vocational ministry, to see that play out every single day, being able to have constant opportunities where I get to speak into other people's lives and help connect people with those that can help bring them life. That's awesome. It's one of the best things about my job. Also, I love the fact that there is a lot of flexibility, at least in my specific role. I know other friends of mine who've worked in vocational ministry in churches where they've got really restricted hours. At least where I'm at, we've got a lot of freedom. So I work at coffee shops most days. I have this studio space here, which I really love and enjoy and have been building out. And so I'll actually probably be spending a lot more time here because I'm moving out of my really nice apartment in with a buddy who is just awesome. He's hilarious and super excited for that move and that transition. But it means I don't have a place to work at from home. So I'll probably be here in the studio making more content, as well as I love being at coffee shops. That energizes me, being in a new space. So having flexibility like that, but also still being around a physical in-person team where we still come together once a week for all staff meetings, which are so much fun. So much life gets brought into me because we're just sitting with one another, having a meal together and hanging out, as well as like talking vision. How can we grow and progress a thing that we feel called to do? So that's really exciting, getting the best of both worlds, where I also get to go and share and talk about the gospel with people at coffee shops, which is I think a lot of people say, oh yeah, I do that. But like, if you're intentional about it, it really will happen. We also do this thing called the 3 circles, which I'll talk about in a video one of these days. That going into those spaces and coffee shops is such a fun opportunity to be able to reach and actually be around the community and neighborhood that our church is in. And I think a lot of churches and their pastoral staff expect their congregations to do things that they're not actually willing to do themselves, like go out and evangelize with people, or actually be active within their community and get to know people. So like the 3 closest coffee shops to our church building, I know just about every single barista there and have a relationship, and been able to pour in and invest in those relationships is something that's really, really important, especially if people who on staff at a church are asking our congregants to go out and do that. We better be doing that first and foremost. Leaders go first. Other things I love about what I do is the church has been so incredible in creating opportunities for creativity to be pressed forward within culture. And I don't know of any organization outside of the church, truthfully, that hires as many creatives as the church does, which is so incredible. Like we've got worship staff, but we also hire like me, for example, some 24-year-old going on 25 who takes photos and makes videos for a living for the most part. And so that is something that I genuinely am like, wow, so blown away about and so excited to continue pressing into. And yeah, something I love about vocational ministry. Other things I love are the people, and it's an environment where people do come first, at least where I'm at personally, being in an environment where people come first typically, which is awesome. You don't see that oftentimes within the corporate world, and being in a position where I actually am with people who genuinely care about me and my well-being in so many different facets of life is one of the most powerful, impactful things that I get to experience on a day-to-day basis. So that's great. Like people ask you, oh, how are you doing? And they don't want just like a BS answer. They want to know how you actually are doing. And that's awesome. Other things that are great, I get to explore a bunch of different avenues of creativity that I might not otherwise in other facets or other capacities. So like I get to help make merch here at Restoration and the Brook. And that's one of the most fun parts about my job, is designing and creating a physical good and product that people get really, really excited about and want to have in their hands. Another thing that's great about working in a church context is it's also a struggle for a lot of people. And that is having your hand in so many different things. That is definitely a big blessing, as well as a difficulty and a strain for a lot of people. For me personally, I really enjoy and appreciate being able to have a hand in so many different facets. So like getting to work with people in family life, but also do creative, as well as like, I love greeting on a Sunday. So like being able to be out on the patio and talk to people. I get to work on so many different types of projects between photo, video, graphics, merch design, marketing, Google Ads, SEO, like all these different aspects, versus if I was in corporate, I'd likely only be able to focus on one. So it really helps you narrow down especially as a younger guy working in a vocational ministry setting, being able to try so many different things and really figure out what you do and don't like. And not to say I know yet. I'm 24, still trying to figure it out, but there is a degree of, oh man, I've started to hone in on what are the things that I really genuinely enjoy, what are the things I want to do more of and step further into. So that's a really exciting aspect of my job. Difficult parts. And these are super real. One of the hardest things about being in ministry is it can be really, really easy for your life to get intertwined in a lot of different ways, which is great because there's so much accountability, but it's also tough because sometimes it makes it hard to know who to go to with certain struggles. And one thing for me personally is like I'm in a simple church or like a house church with a bunch of other people on staff, which is so good and so much fun. And I'm like, wow, I feel so much closer to these people. I get to see their hearts in a different capacity than I would otherwise. But it makes it where a lot of my friends and my friendship circles overlap with my work circles and overlap with my spiritual life. And for the right people, that can be awesome and incredible. And you really are like in family with people. But in another equally real aspect is when there's tension or disagreements or difficulty, that it can cause a lot of pain and tension. And so one of the biggest things that I've had to learn is like apologize often and quickly. Like try not to hold on to any bitterness. And I'm not the most confrontational person in the world. And so that is a struggle for me personally, but it has been so good being in community with people that I work with and do spiritual life with, which is, it's so much fun. But it is also still such a struggle at times where I know a lot of people who have had trouble with that. And I will also say it is so important to try to build some relationships that are outside of that circle, especially just being in ministry. It can be so easy to be surrounded by a Christian bubble, but trying as adamantly as you possibly can to ensure that you're not just being surrounded with people like you, so that you can actually go out and have an impact on people within the world. And that doesn't mean you need to go and like do a bunch of things that you feel morally against, but just being open, willing to having friendships, especially with people who have different beliefs with you, because gosh, how else are you going to impact their lives and share who Jesus is if you don't have friends who don't know him? So that seems like a given. Other difficulties working in ministry. Pay. Yeah. There's not a ton of money in working for the church, believe it or not, unless you're Joel Osteen. Don't at me. Sorry. But truthfully, there's not a ton of money in it, which is okay. And it is definitely for sure a financial sacrifice to work for the church, but it can also be a huge blessing to be in a position where you have to trust the Lord with your finances. And I'm not always the best at that. And so it's been a really good and growing experience in that regards. And I'm also not the wisest steward of my own personal finances at times. Not going to lie, the hours, it can be good and bad. And so like I'll have weeks where there's not much to do at all. And you'll get this in most businesses, especially if you're in one where you're essentially like an owner, is there's an infinite number of things that you could do to progress things forward. There's an infinite number of changes that could occur to make something better, to make the product that you're creating better, to make the coffee shop you're building better, run smoother or more inviting to prospective people who want to come and visit your shop. And church is very much like that, where there's an infinite number of things that could get done, but such a limited number of people and capacity to achieve those things. And so it can feel really easy to be running in a hamster wheel where you're like just keeping up with the things that you should be doing, but you're not actually pushing the wheel forward. And that's a very difficult but true reality of working in vocational ministry. Is it can be really easy to feel like, dang, I'm not actually pushing things forward, or feeling like you have so much to do because staffs are limited, budgets are very limited, and having to, Yeah, set boundaries is really tough around how much you can't do, but also if you're someone like me who just genuinely cares a lot and wants to give a lot, it can be hard to make sure that you're maintaining proper balance between your social, relational, spiritual, work life, and physical life. Maintaining all of those things in a good balance is hard. And I know for me personally, I'll oftentimes sacrifice one aspect where I'll sacrifice my friendship relationships, and work will be really good and spiritual life will be really good. But my relationships and emotional health will be kind of low. And then maybe inverse, like I'll overcorrect and be pouring a ton of time into friendship relationships and doing things for myself. And so that is still a struggle I'm personally trying to get through and work on how to find a good balance as well as consistency so that I'm not fluctuating. But that is a real thing I've seen a lot of people within a ministry context have difficulty with, is balancing all the different aspects of life, because it can be very demanding, and there is a lot of emotional taxation and spiritual taxation that comes alongside working in vocational ministry. Another aspect that is hard but also good is recognizing that you are, in fact, a representative of not just your church organization, but of Christ. And this is one of the things that's been most challenging, but also most growing for me, is seeing, dang, yeah, I represent my church with whatever I post, whatever I do, wherever I go. And once I've started to get into that mentality, it helped me better understand, wow, I am an ambassador of Christ Jesus, first and foremost, before I'm an ambassador of Restoration of the Brook. And that is a really challenging thing if you don't live above reproach, truthfully. If you want to go out and live a life of self-indulgence, or doing things that you know you should not necessarily do, or treating people poorly, it reflects really poorly upon the church or organization which you represent. And even more so, how does it negatively reflect on Jesus and what it means to be a follower of Christ? And so that's a really challenging thing, where it's like, dang, you've got to learn to really be a good representative 24/7. And not to say you'll fall short here and there, but knowing, hey, how can I try to live at that standard constantly is a really difficult thing. I struggled with this a lot when I first came on staff, was having most of my friendship interactions turn into business interactions, in a sense, or ministry interactions, where I had a hard time hanging out with people I just wanted to be friends with and hang out with without them giving me feedback about something at church that they disagreed with, or something that they'd like to see. And there's a space for that. But that was a really hard line to initially draw with close relationships and friends, and saying, hey, I appreciate that you want to talk about this. I would really love to just not discuss work at the moment and just hang out and be with you. And that's a tough thing to tell people who are coming out of a place of love for you and the organization, where those corrections and those suggestions come from a place of wanting to see things be as reflective of God or as good as possible. And it's tough to ingest all of that and take it upon you, but it's also equally as difficult to say, hey, this is something I just can't talk about right now. Like, can we talk about something else and just hang out? Like, this is time for us to like connect and be like just boys and hang out, versus I want to talk about work. And so that's definitely a challenge, but is something that can be worked through. But yeah, being always on is very tough. I think one of the tough things about ministry is oftentimes people in leadership don't want to bleed. And I'm very guilty of this, especially as a person who could do with less hurry in their life. Shout out John Mark Comer and my girlfriend for telling me that I need to slow down constantly. But a very real thing is feeling like you're on 24/7, especially on a Sunday where there's so much happening, so many people coming around. You want to be good energy so that people feel excited to be at church. And that's something I genuinely care about. And I want people to feel welcome and excited to be there, and show that I'm excited to be there, because how can I expect someone to have a good time and a good church experience if I'm not projecting that? But it is tough where sometimes you're just at 20% capacity. And so this Sunday, for example, I was at like 20% capacity. I'm like right here versus up here where I normally try to be. And it gets really difficult because you don't want to be fake around people, and people can sniff out insincerity. And so it's also knowing like the time and place to be like, oh yeah, I'm just having a long week and things are tough. But it also goes a long way when you work in ministry to let people know that, hey, you're a real life human being as well who has difficulties and shortcomings just like every other human being. And because you work in a vocational ministry setting does not mean you are better than someone else or more holy or you have a better calling, which is one of the dumbest concepts in my head, because everyone has the calling to go and make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey all that God has commanded us, and surely he will be with us till the end of the age. It can be really tough exposing yourself in that capacity of being like, hey, no, I'm like a regular human being too. And sometimes I have a low capacity or I've just had a long week or tiring week. And so, yeah, I was out for a few days for a friend's bachelor trip and then had a wedding coming back. So I just missed like a bunch of time and was catching up, and also had some like client contract work I was wrapping up on the side, and came into Sunday just dead. And so it was tough. And it's tough to be real with people when they're like, oh, hey, how are you doing? And being okay saying, oh man, I'm actually really tired and exhausted this morning. And awesome, honestly, like it's a good opportunity to help bring them into understanding their role within the church and ministry. And like, dude, I have a hard time asking for this, but like going up and asking for prayer if your church is a place that does that, or even asking people as they ask you like, oh, how are you doing? Saying like, oh, I'm actually really exhausted in this capacity. Would you mind praying for me right now? And bringing people into that reality is such an awesome opportunity, but it's also such a difficult thing working in vocational ministry. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for this episode. I don't know, I did that. Yeah, if you want to hear more about what it's like working in vocational ministry or being a creative director in general, creating content for a living, yeah, thanks for joining along, and I hope you subscribe and keep following along, because I'm excited to make more content like this, as well as shorter videos talking about things that I'm passionate about, like working in the church, as well as like just doing ministry as an everyday, ordinary person. Things like desk setups, things like building out the studio space, things like, I don't know, whatever I care about. That's kind of what this channel is for. So thanks for listening or watching, hanging out, and love you. And we'll see you. Well, I won't see you. You'll see me, but I'd love to see you. Hit me up. Hit me up. All right. Bye.